Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. I'm Sean Akimbale at Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos, Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari has departed Nigeria for Japan to participate in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development holding in Yokohama between the 28th of August and 30th with the theme, quote, Africa and Yokohama sharing passion for the future. President Buhari will deliver Nigeria's statement during plenary session to appraise Nigeria-Japan relations and takeaways from the conference. In addition to a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Abe, President Buhari would also attend some side events and meet chief executive officers of some Japanese companies with investments in Nigeria. The president is expected back in Nigeria on Saturday. Well, in a bit, we shall be getting more details of the possible impact of the conference on Nigerians. Let's talk about perhaps one thing that bothers you and I. And that situation is not good enough. The Nigeria that I know is the one where people work so hard to earn a living, where people are their brother's keeper, in Nigeria where people are too scared to mess up their family names because of things that mostly are earthly gains and pleasure. But today, things appear to have changed. Nigerians in some quarters are perceived differently. A case in point is a recent bust by the American Security Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and its arrest of some Nigerians and some of those who are of Nigerian descent. It's a wide-ranging fraud and money laundering scheme born out of email scams, which has taken a big hit after a nearly 3-year FBI investigation. The FBI announced an indictment charging 80 people with stealing $6 million and attempting to steal another $40 million through various schemes that targeted businesses, the elderly, and anyone susceptible to a romance scam. Most of the defendants are Nigerians. The officials say they believe this is one of the largest cases of its kind in the United States history. Take a listen to the FBI's findings.
We have been successful in extraditing Nigerian citizens in the past, and we're going to make every effort in this case to extradite the defendants who we believe are in Nigeria now. Once a legitimate business is tricked into wiring money into a bank account, the fraudsters try to get the money out of that bank account as quickly as they can, whether they either withdraw it in cash or cashier's check or they transfer it to another bank account. So once it goes, it becomes very hard to stop it, and it eventually ends up in bank accounts in Nigeria.
Not good enough. Some of the alleged frauds rip people off, to say the least. These situations are very disgraceful. Here's some of the manner in which they've collected money from unsuspecting people in the United States.
The romance scams prey on vulnerable populations, but the BEC victims are often reputable companies and conscientious employees who have been fooled by sophisticated cyber frauds into transferring money.
So those are some of the schemes of these frauds. Where do we go from here, everyone? The nation's reputation has been under scrutiny in the past weeks, with different stories about the country hitting the global limelight. In the space of a few weeks, there have been reports on 3 high-profile cases of online fraud committed by Nigerians. The first case, you remember, involves a celebrated young Nigerian entrepreneur who was arrested by the same United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, for online phishing of a UK-based company. The second involves financial improprieties by employees of an online trading store, an e-commerce platform, and the fraud linked with some of their staff. Perhaps a most devastating is the one that is involving 80 Nigerians being investigated by the FBI. Some of them who were arrested by the FBI for online scams and money laundering. Let's talk about this, and let's get the reaction of the Nigerian government on this that is not looking well on the nation's reputation. I've been joined by the president's media advisor, Mr. Garba Shehu. He joins us from Abuja. Thank you so much, Mr. Shehu, for joining us on the program tonight. It's devastating. It's disturbing, to say the least, for a lot of Nigerians who do legitimate businesses, who are into things that are right. And hearing these kind of stories, I'm very certain that this will bother the president and perhaps the government. But what would you say is a reaction of government on these reputation-destroying incidents?
Thank you for inviting us to your program. And to say that, yes, as you have said, this is doubly damaging for every citizen of Nigeria. There's a scar on every one of us who goes out of this country, and they are seen in the images that these our brothers have created. And the whole nation itself is tainted. For the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, this is a wake-up call. What it means is that the government which has started its second term on the strong promise of reinvigorating the war against criminality, including scams and the corruption. That the government is seriously now engaged in revamping all of the laws and the infrastructure for fighting these sorts of crime. We will cooperate with international organizations and the nations. The government would generate and ask for new laws from the National Assembly, and there will be new executive orders that will block some of these loopholes that have been exploited by our fellow countrymen to go out there and embarrass and black paint the country.
Shehu, a lot of people are disturbed, especially those who are earning legitimate monies outside of the country. Because you hear situation in China, some Nigerians spending time in prison. You hear situation in Thailand. You hear situation in Saudi Arabia from people being behind bars because of drug-related issues and all of that. But on this very one relating to fraud and the bust by the FBI, what is the specific reaction of, because it touched a lot of Nigerians, did it touch the president in the same manner?
As I said from the beginning, the first one is international cooperation. This administration would work with all nations around the globe to fight criminality. If it is Nigerians that are involved in this thing, well, hard luck to them. But the government would not stand in the way of the justice systems. Every citizen of this country who travels out of the country, they are required to obey the laws of their host countries. President Muhammadu Buhari is not one to excuse Nigerians from obeying laws of countries in which they reside. In addition to that, as I said, so therefore, you will expect that a more vigorous engagement with the National Assembly. The laws have got to change. These scams have to be tackled. And if it will take executive orders, this will be fashioned out very rapidly.
Because the reputation of the country is involved here, is there any immediate move that has been made or that is in the works on making sure that things are right so all Nigerians are not painted with the same brush?
Well, I think that every person with a modicum of common sense, they know that the action of a few Nigerians is not the action of all of Nigerians. We are 200 million plus in this country. And you're talking about 80 in this case in the United States of America. They will face the justice system of the country. If the Nigerian government is required to operate in any way, extradition or any other way, yes, if it meets the requirements of our laws, they will be assisted to prosecute them and to face justice in those cases. But this thing is not about Nigerians. Nigerians are hardworking and honest people all over the world. There are millions of our citizens who are out there earning legitimately their own incomes. No, they don't deserve to be so tarnished.
Is there, perhaps, before I leave that matter, is there any direct communication between Nigeria and the United States government on this very one? Because it's been termed as perhaps the largest incident of online phishing or online fraud in the United States history.
Yes, they are talking to our Ministry of Justice. The Diaspora Commission is also there, primarily concerned for those rights of fellow citizens. The Nigerian government has taken a position on this matter. It's cooperation all the way. We will cooperate.
Give us a sense, Mr. Shehu, on what Nigerians will benefit from this week-long trip of Mr. President. This perhaps going to be his first since he put together a cabinet. What is in it for Nigerians?
Well, you know that all of the big nations, the big economies of the country, of the nation, of the world, have one form of engagement or the other with Africans. The Chinese are doing this, and they are bringing development in that regard. The Europeans are engaging with Africans. The Indians are doing that, and the Japanese, through this 7th TICAD meeting taking place in Tokyo, international conference, is about sharing experience and patching and blessings for the future. The whole idea is partnership between the African countries and Japan in order that we will gain positively for the achievements that they had themselves chalked, so that we will be helped to grow industry and infrastructure.
Can you be specific with us on the business interest areas that the president will be conversing for? For example, we do know that there's some Japanese business in terms of automobile and several other areas that we've seen some Japanese investment in Nigeria in the past. What are the specific areas that Nigeria will be talking to Japan or Japan businessmen and women to invest in the country for?
The president has a statement that he'll be reading at the summit without meaning to preempt all of that. You know that Nigeria, the president has, while he inaugurated the Council of Ministers, made it clear that this country is no longer disposed to just receiving aid. We are going for partnerships, and so therefore what it means is that if it is motor vehicles, we already have our policy for the assembly of cars and their manufacture in this country. Infrastructure is very key to Nigeria: power, railway, roads, and bridges. All of these things would be put on the table. Nigerian president would, in addition to engaging the Japanese government, of course, be sitting down with leading Japanese businesses. And the whole idea is increasing their investment in Nigeria so that jobs will grow here and that things we buy from there can be assembled, can be manufactured here in our own country.
Is there any possibility of talking about getting loans from Japan? Is that going to be on the table?
I'm not sure I know about that, but what I know is that the money Japanese will put forward. Remember that during the 6th summit, which took place in Nairobi 3 years ago, they put $30 billion to Africa to finance investment and infrastructure. Now, obviously, this money is not a gift. It is money you will pay back, but perhaps at very, very concessionary interest. We would expect that the Japanese would put far bigger amount of money on the table. And yes, if we can draw to increase infrastructure, to complete ongoing infrastructure projects in this country, why not? Nigeria would draw from all of that.
Since we're talking about government and the activities of government, give us an insight into what is happening, Madam Shehu. For example, the head of service, Madam Oyoita, we understand that she resigned. What is the latest on that situation? She was at the ministerial inauguration.
Well, you know, we have spoken the truth to the nation on this matter, but I think that the media wants to hear a different language than the one we are speaking. For as far as we can see in the presidency, and this is talking about the secretariat of the president, there is no such letter as a resignation letter from the head of service. So if there is no resignation letter on the table, the question of its withdrawal does simply not arise. So there we are. Yes, there is an ongoing engagement by the EFCC with the head of service of the Federation. It's an ongoing matter. And I think that it is for the EFCC to call the shots, not the presidency.
But is the president concerned about this situation where a top official of government on the federal level at that is being investigated on what the EFCC has termed massive fraud, allegations of massive fraud?
No, on the contrary, it should please the president. He then tells you that his government is working and that all of those opposition politicians who are screaming out there saying this is a partisan engagement and that president is protective of people who are around him, they have to find another story. This story simply will not sell. The president will not be excited because a misfortune had befallen somebody. But yes, he is a president who has vowed to eliminate corruption. So if the system is working, if it is catching them, beautiful. You should be pleased with that. And Nigerians should encourage the president in this line.
Well, we understand how some of the workings of government is, especially as Nigeria seems to mirror the federal system and the manner in which the presidency is being run in the United States. The president made categorical statements about the communication in the presidency and his cabinet members. He did say that any communication to his own office or for his own attention should be channeled through his head of service, his chief of staff, and anything that has to do with the cabinet or with the Federal Executive Council should be channeled through the SGF. A lot of people believe that this might be some kind of issues relating to what a lot of people have said in the past, where top government officials say there is government in the government of President Buhari and there is high-ranking cabal holding on to government. Clear the air for us on this one.
Well, we are reading a lot of nonsense in that regard. Let me tell you, this president, every leader, even if he's a prime minister, not an executive president, he needs a secretariat that will help him to process information or documents that come before him. He's the president for 200 million people. Let me tell you this story, if you have the time for it. In the years past in this country, during the military rule, there was a particular minister who sent a memo to the sitting head of state. It was as big as a textbook. Inside that memorandum, he hid a recommendation asking for the president's permission to dismiss permanent secretary. Minister asking the president to allow him to dismiss permanent secretary. That military ruler didn't read the memo. He couldn't have read everything in that. He wrote approved. So what happened? Well, by the time the thing was out, the secretary to the government at that time looked at it and said, look, the minister cannot dismiss a permanent secretary. It cannot happen. What did they do to resolve the problem? They redeployed that permanent secretary, hid him somewhere in the office of the head of service until after that head of state had left office. They reposted him and he continued to contribute to the nation's development. So the thing then is the president needs to have all of these things put together.
All right.
And presented him as to policy, A, B, C, and he decides ticks off what he wants. So,
Mr. Shehu, we need to go, and I need to get your reaction on this quickly, if you may, in few seconds, Mr. Shehu. If I may show you this breakdown. Well, of course, we know that all the 6 geopolitical zones in the country have their own share of the appointments in President Buhari's cabinet. But if you look at the distribution and the regions that have perhaps the larger share, a lot of Nigerians are reacting. Look at what is on your screen from the Northwest with 10, that of the president inclusive. How would you react to these, Mr. Shehu?
I'm not going to make excuses for the president. The president said this in Zaria. Look at where the votes came from. That's basically it. Every state has a minister. That's the constitutional requirement. Does the constitution go on to specifically say ministry A, B, C should go to this or that zone? It didn't say so. The president has done what he thinks will work for him in the second term. He needs to deliver on his promises, and that's what he has just done.
Mr. Shehu, President, Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.